When they called about my aunt's death, I didn't cry. I didn't say much at all, just packed a black coat, 2 notebooks, and a set of keys I hadn't touched in 4 years. I told myself it would be simple. Go back, sort her things, sign whatever papers the sisters needed me to sign, and leave before I started remembering too much. St. Eustelle's School for Girls hadn't changed. Same crooked wrought iron gate, same stone gargoyles slouched above the chapel's stained glass, same sound of wind through the courtyard trees, like whispered prayers no one meant to say aloud. I walked past the bell tower. Its rope had been cut since I was 17. Still, I heard it ring once as I crossed the threshold. No one else seemed to. Inside, the school was cold. Not broken heater cold, just still, like it had been holding its breath since the moment she died. Her office was sealed with a velvet ribbon. A note pinned to the door read, "Room held in silence for Sister Vellin. Do not enter until she is ready." Sister Vellin, my aunt, but also, once, me. They gave me that name too when I was a girl here. I'd forgotten that part until now. I was shown to the guest quarters, formerly the infirmary. 3 beds, 2 crosses, 1 window that wouldn't open. The nun who led me there didn't speak, just handed me a key and did the sign of the cross on my wrist. It burned a little. I didn't ask why. The chapel was locked. I tried the door on instinct, but it didn't move. There used to be no lock at all. My aunt used to say the house of God should never require permission. Now there was a thick bolt. Someone had scratched a symbol above it, a shape I almost remembered. A half circle, a hook, 3 dots. It looked familiar in a way I didn't like. At dusk, I walked the halls. Girls in uniforms passed in pairs, whispering. A few glanced at me. One curtsied. Another murmured, "Sister Vellin," but they weren't looking at my aunt's photo on the wall. They were looking at me. I stopped in front of the chapel again before bed, just stared at the heavy door, listening, and then, just as the last light faded, a single creak, like a floorboard beneath the chapel shifting, followed by another. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, below me. No one was in the chapel, I was sure of it, and yet something, or someone, was moving beneath it. I didn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m., the bell rang once, low and hollow. The rope was still cut. I told myself it was the pipes. Old buildings creak. They settle, they shift. They do not whisper your name through the chapel floor at 2 in the morning. But by morning, that's what I'd decided. Because the alternative meant someone had been moving beneath a sealed chapel, barefoot, on rotting wood, calling me back to a name I stopped answering to years ago. The girls had morning prayers at 6. I heard them from the window, soft voices reciting Latin, almost melodic. But something about it was off. They spoke in unison, perfect unison, no stumbles, no breaks for breath. Just one long exhale disguised as a prayer. It didn't sound like children. It sounded like a recording. I walked the halls again after breakfast. Sister Therese, my aunt's closest assistant, met me in the corridor. She looked smaller than I remembered, pale. Her habit hung heavy around her, like wet cloth. "We're grateful you came," she said quietly, eyes never quite meeting mine. "She told us you would." "My aunt?" I asked. "Sister Vellin," she corrected. I paused. That was her name, not mine. Therese blinked slowly. "No," she said. "She gave it to you." And then she smiled. Not warmly, just knowingly. I took the long corridor toward the West Wing, where we weren't allowed as children. The hallway ended in an old storage closet, dust-choked, lined with crumbling hymnals and rusted incense burners. But on the far wall, someone had drawn a symbol in wax. The same symbol from the chapel door. Half circle, hook, 3 dots. I didn't know why, but I touched it. And the moment I did, the floor beneath me groaned. Not from weight, from something moving underneath. I dropped to my knees, pressed my ear to the ground, and I heard whispers. Not words, not language, just shapes of breath, like someone repeating the same prayer again and again, without voice, without need for air. Back in my aunt's office, the ribbon had been removed. The door left ajar. I stepped inside and froze. The walls were covered in drawings, taped corner to corner. All of them were of the same figure. A woman in a black veil, bare feet, eyes closed, hands clasped in prayer. The only difference in each drawing was the face. Some were blank, some smiling, some bleeding. But in the final image, dead center on the back wall, the woman was drawn from behind, and the back of her neck had been scratched away until only bone showed. Above it, someone had written, "The saint always walks before the new one takes her place." That night, I didn't sleep either. Not out of fear, out of something worse, recognition. The chapel creaked again, and I didn't just hear the footsteps this time. I heard my name. Sister Vellin. I hadn't dreamed of this place in years, but on the 3rd night, the dream came. I was 9 again, kneeling outside the chapel, waiting for my aunt to finish evening prayers. The hallway was darker than it should have been, the windows smeared with condensation, the candles down to stubs. I remember hearing the sound of a latch, and then I was inside the confessional, not walking, not entering, just in it, like I'd always been there. Wood on all sides, the thin screen between booths glowing softly from the candle outside, but no voices, only breathing, mine and someone else's. Margot. The voice came from the other side of the screen, gentle, familiar, low. "Do you remember what you did?" I tried to speak. I couldn't. My hands were sticky. When I looked down, they were covered in ink, thick, black, wet, smearing the seat, pooling in my lap. Then the screen began to warp, bending inward as if someone were leaning through from the other side. And I saw a face, eyes closed, mouth stitched shut. But I recognized the hair, the jaw, the mark on the neck. It was me. I woke up gasping, sitting upright in the guest bed. My hands were clean. The room was empty, but my journal, left closed beside the pillow, had been opened. A single sentence had been written across both pages. Do not confess what she still carries. The ink was fresh, and it was my handwriting. At breakfast, the girls stared at me. A few crossed themselves when I entered the dining hall. One left the room entirely. I cornered Sister Therese in the linen closet. "What do they think I am?" I asked. She folded a cloth too slowly. "We do not speak of the transition," she said. "The saint chooses, we prepare." "The saint is dead." "Not entirely," she murmured. "She is what remains when we take everything else away." I went back to the chapel, still locked. I pressed my ear to the door, breath shallow. And this time, I didn't hear footsteps. I heard weeping, quiet, controlled, the kind of weeping you do alone when you've wept that way before. I backed away from the door slowly, but as I turned, I saw a smear of black ink on the floor beside it, shaped like a handprint, mine. I didn't plan to go through her things that day, but something drew me to her office. Not duty, not grief, just the nagging sense that there was something in there waiting for me. The kind of waiting that felt patient, like it already knew I'd come. The office hadn't changed, still smelled like candle wax and paper. Her desk was orderly, too orderly. Every drawer labeled, every paper clipped with red thread. I knew better than to start there. Instead, I went for the wall cabinet behind the door. It used to be locked when I was a student. Now, the key was taped to the back of the crucifix above it. Inside, dozens of letters, bound in ribbon, all addressed to me, but postmarked with dates that didn't make sense. One from 2005. I was 4. I opened the top one, dated 2 years ago, signed with my aunt's initials. My Margot, by now you will have come back. I hope it is not too late to speak plainly. There are memories in this place that were taken from you. I only did what was necessary to keep them hidden. If you find the chapel door closed, do not try to open it from above. Wait for the altar to move. When it does, you will remember what must be carried again. You will not believe me at first, but you are not the first you, and she was not the last me. Trust only the child who does not speak. They will know you by the way you walk. S.V. My hands were shaking. I sat there with the letter pressed against my chest, like it might stop the cold that had started behind my eyes. If this was a trick, if someone had planted it, it was too specific, too intimate. Only she would have known about the child, the one who used to follow me in the courtyard and hum without words, the one who disappeared just before I left. I opened more letters. Some were just single sentences. If she is weeping beneath you, do not answer her name. The saint does not like to be seen. If you dream of teeth, light a candle immediately. But one near the bottom was different. No date, unfolded easily, as if it had been read many times. Margot, when you see the drawings, don't be afraid. You've worn her face before. I didn't know it would be you again. Forgive me for burying you twice. I dropped the letter. because something moved behind the wall cabinet. A creak, then a thud, then a breath. Not mine. That night, I didn't dream, but when I woke, the cabinet was wide open, and every single letter was laid out on the desk in a perfect spiral. At the center, a drawing, pencil, childlike, torn at the edges. It was of the chapel, and below it, in careful handwriting. The altar opens from underneath. She remembers the way. I waited until midnight to go. The school was silent by then. No footsteps, no bells, no singing from the girls' dormitory. Only the wind pressing against the stained glass and the feeling that someone was awake beneath me. I lit a candle from the chapel vestibule, one of the tall ones, the kind used for vigil masses. I carried it like I had as a child, 2 hands, 1 breath, no shaking. But this time, I walked alone. The chapel doors were unlocked, just as the letter said they would be. No one had told me. No one had left a key, but they were open. Inside, the air felt thick, not stale, held, as if it had been waiting for someone to breathe it in. I stepped to the altar. Marble, white-veined, untouched. It hadn't changed. Neither had the inscription at the base, Fiat voluntas tua, let thy will be done. I ran my fingers under the edge until I felt the notch, a small groove, fingernail-sized, like something meant to be pulled. I hesitated, then pressed. There was a click, a dull grind, then a shift beneath my feet. The marble floor behind the altar sank, revealing a square cutout, stairs, dust-covered, steep, carved into stone. I didn't question. I descended. The air grew colder with each step. The candle barely held. I heard the whisper again. Not words this time, just the shape of breath. And then, a room. It was circular, no larger than the chapel above. Walls made of old brick and bone-colored mortar. A faint scent of incense long extinguished. In the center, the door, wood, reinforced with iron, carved with Latin, covered in symbols, familiar ones now. At the top, in gold leaf so faded it shimmered more in memory than light, were 3 words, "She still walks." And hanging from a rusted hook, my aunt's rosary. I stepped closer. The candle flickered violently. I shielded it with my hand. I didn't touch the door, but I knelt before it. Not out of reverence, not fear, recognition. Behind the door, something moved, softly, a shift of fabric, a single footstep. Then, nothing, but I knew she was there. The saint, the woman buried here before canon, before the school, before my aunt. And I knew I'd seen her before. I had walked behind her once, years ago. In a dream I thought I'd forgotten. Only now, I wasn't following her. I was standing in her place. I didn't bring a key. I didn't need one. The door wasn't locked. It was waiting. The moment I touched the iron handle, warm like skin, it swung open, slow and silent. The air inside smelled like wax and crushed flowers. Not rot, not death. The room beyond was smaller than I expected, circular, like the chamber before it, but lower, barely tall enough to stand. The walls were smooth stone, washed in candlelight from flames that burned without smoke, and in the center, on a raised stone slab, was her. The woman lay in silence, arms crossed, a thin white veil over her face, skin pale and untouched, hands delicate, curled as if in half prayer, hair dark and coiled around her shoulders like water. No dust, no decay, but not embalmed either. She looked asleep, peaceful, too peaceful, because she looked like me. Not in the generic way people say, not just similar. The cheekbones, the jaw, the curve of the nose, the scar beneath the lip I'd had since I was 11. She was me. I stepped closer. My breath shook. Beneath her hands was a small leather-bound journal. I reached for it. My fingers brushed hers. Warm. I recoiled, nearly dropped the candle. She didn't move, but the veil shifted slightly, like it had been exhaling. The journal was worn, the leather brittle at the edges. Inside were pages of ritual notes, Latin prayers, dates spanning over a century. But toward the back, the script changed, familiar, urgent, my aunt's handwriting. She has walked this path 9 times. She forgets each time, but the saint does not. She remembers for both of them. I tried to end the cycle. I sealed the door, hid the stairs, buried the drawings, but the prayers always begin again. She returns when the girls start humming. She returns when the bell rings with no rope. She returns when her hands are clean, but she dreams of ink. I flipped the last page. It was blank, until the candlelight flickered and a sentence appeared in faint gold. Let her rest, or take her place. I turned back to the slab. The woman's eyes were still closed. Her breathing had stopped, or maybe it had never started. I should have run, but I couldn't move, because in the silence, I heard footsteps, slow, soft, coming down the stairs behind me, and then a whisper. She is not canonized. She is contained. The footsteps stopped just outside the chamber. I didn't turn. I knew who it was, who it had to be. Not my aunt, not a student, not even a voice from the past. It was the woman from the slab, standing where I had stood a moment ago, because now I was in her place. The candle in my hand dimmed, not extinguished, just small, like it was afraid to burn too loudly. And then I heard it. Breath. Not mine, not from behind, from the slab. I looked down. The veil had fallen off her face, and her eyes were open. Not fully, just enough for her to see me. She didn't speak, she didn't move, but her gaze was knowing, heavy, like someone watching herself across a mirror that never cracked. And then I understood. It was never about death, never about sainthood, not even about faith. It was about containment, about memory, about keeping her here so that I could go live a life I was never meant to remember. Behind me, a voice spoke, calm, ceremonial. She still walks. But she is tired, and you remember too much. I turned. The chapel girls were gathered in the stairwell, candles in hand, veils over their heads. Sister Therese at the front holding a robe, my robe. They didn't ask. They waited. I stepped away from the slab, but my body felt heavy, slower, like it remembered something I hadn't yet. Sister Therese placed the robe over my shoulders. The saint has chosen to remain. Who chose me? I asked. You did, she said, and kissed my forehead. The ceremony was quiet. No hymns, no incense, only a candle passed from hand to hand and a vow I don't remember speaking, but heard in my own voice anyway. Let her walk free, and I will keep her place. They led me back up the stairs, past the chapel, to the headmistress's office. My aunt's room, now mine. The next day, a new girl arrived. She looked nervous, thin, pale, familiar. She crossed herself at the chapel, paused, then looked up at the bell tower. The rope was still missing, but the bell rang once, low, hollow, just for her. They call me Sister Vellin now. The girls curtsy when I pass. Sister Therese brings me my tea. I don't sleep much, but I listen to the chapel, to the stairs, to the sound of her walking beneath the stone, beneath the school, in the place I used to dream about. She doesn't knock. She doesn't cry. She just walks, quietly, faithfully, until the next one forgets.